Western civilization, how much do you know? My name is Russell Miles, and as I mentioned in our last podcast, I come from a long line of history buffs. In this episode, we're going to look at Western civilization through art, design, and architecture. I imagine you have some ideas about Renaissance art, magnificent cathedrals, and splendid feats of engineering. I hope to show you all this and more and discuss some of the ideals that have come to shape Western civilization. Michelangelo was born in Florence in 1475. He was a sculptor, painter, architect, and a poet, and is considered to have changed Western art. His most notable painting is on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which depict 9 episodes from the Book of Genesis. At a time when few were literate, these paintings were to inspire the faithful. The paintings contain over 300 figures and took 4 years to complete. The Sistine Chapel receives over 5 million visitors each year. Michelangelo's depiction of God challenged art convention at the time, which avoided any depiction of God's person, at the most showing an outstretched hand, whereas Michelangelo showed God and Adam as the same size. This reflected the Renaissance era, where the new merchants were expressing optimism and being equal to the aristocratic class. There was a new wave of change within Western civilization. The Sistine Chapel ceiling shows God in various scenes. In the second central panel from the front is the story of Moses receiving the 10 Commandments. God is shown bent over, revealing his posterior. The scene arose from Moses asking to see God to verify the source of the 10 Commandments. "Show me your glory," Exodus 33:18. God retorts, "You cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live," Exodus 33:20. But God compromises, "You shall see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen," Exodus 33:22. Later the Vatican decreed that another painter paint out the rude bits in the Sistine Chapel ceiling, but seemed content to leave God's bare arse. Still, fads changed, and the modern restoration of the Sistine Chapel has seen the fig leaves scraped off to reveal the original art. What is the difference between a basilica and a cathedral? Is it A, a cathedral has a spire and a basilica has a dome? Or B, a cathedral denotes an important church for the Catholic faith and a basilica for the Orthodox? Or C, a cathedral is the home church of a bishop? Or D, a cathedral takes the form of a long cross from above and a basilica is an equal length cross? While you are pondering this, complete the following poem by Lord Byron. "Prosperity will ne'er survey a nobler grave than this. Here lies the bones of Castlereagh. Stop, traveller, and A, hiss, B, piss, C, pray, or D, remiss." Lord Byron was a tour de force of poetry of his day, and purposely used his talent to challenge the authoritarian state and to support the oppressed. Lord Byron also challenged sexual mores, was a prima donna, and a boxing manager. Castlereagh in this poem was the British Foreign Secretary, who had suicided not long before. Castlereagh had organised the army in the wars against Napoleon. He was also instrumental in negotiating what became known as the Quadruple Alliance between Britain, Austria, Russia and Prussia that had brought peace with France. Castlereagh was criticised at home for the peace treaty that gave a free hand to reactionary governments on the continent. Lord Byron went into self-imposed exile. He later became involved in a Greek rebellion against the Turks, where he became ill and died, but his fame lived on. In the 1980s, the solidarity activist Lech Wałęsa posted these Byron lines in the Lens shipyards in Gdańsk. "For freedom's battle once begun, bequeathed by bleeding sire to son, through battle off is ever won." The answer to the question is, of course, piss. A cathedral is the home church of a bishop and often the most important church in a large city. A basilica is a special church due to heritage, architectural style, and given to right to use that name by the church leadership. Early Christians took over traditional temples or emulated their design of a dome roof. Orthodox churches had continued to use this design, with the dome symbolising heaven. A spire or spires on a church is a symbol of piety and also of power and prestige. Spires were common in Britain and Northern Europe. Catholic churches tend to take the form of a long cross from above, and Orthodox more an equal length cross. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, the night is shattered, and the blue stars shiver in the distance. The night winds revolve in the sky and sings. Tonight I write the saddest lines. Pablo Neruda's poem continues with A. I love my child and I miss her so. B. I love the people and sometimes they love me too. Or C. I love my wife and sometimes she loved me too. Or D. I loved her and sometimes she loved me too. Ricardo Reeves Besotto, who wrote under Pablo Neruda, is Chile's most famous poet. He was 13 years of age when he wrote Enthusiasm and Perseverance. He enjoyed worldwide fame and his books were published into many languages. Pablo Neruda also served as a diplomat. He married a Dutch woman while overseas. They had a daughter together. They divorced, and he never saw his daughter again before she died at an early age. Pablo Neruda became an ardent communist and was elected a senator. He then fled into exile, fearing arrest in the emerging Cold War era. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. Later he was received home as an esteemed poet. His death was surrounded with controversy due to the then military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet.
La condición del novelista que tiene de alguna manera o de otra ese acceso directo.
Pablo Neruda was much admired for his passionate love poems. The answer is D. I loved her and sometimes she loved me. Chile is representative of the transported Western culture by colonization and conquest. Pablo's poet arose out of Western traditions. Chile's independence, emerging democracy, political turmoil, class conflict, racism and struggles mirror Western evolution. In 1988, Augusto Pinochet called a plebiscite as to whether his rule should extend for a further 8 years. The no campaign advertisement was considered pivotal in focusing the campaign on change and won with 56% of the vote, forcing Pinochet to resign. Art has been a powerful force in Western culture.
Voy a decir que no, porque nace el arco iris después de la tempestad, porque quiero que...
Professor Quatermass, the will to survive is an odd phenomenon, Rodney. If we found out our world was doomed, say by climate change, what will we do about it? Dr. Rodney, nothing, just go on squabbling. The television series Quatermass and the Pit was made in A. 1958, B. 1963, C. 1968, or D. 1971. Quatermass was a British television science fiction serial transmitted live by the BBC in the 1950s. The 6-part Quatermass and the Pit was broadcast in December 1958 and January 1959. It was remade as a movie in 1967. The issue of climate change, as shown by the dialogue, is long-standing. The Quatermass series also touched on ethical responsibility of scientists, good and evil, mythology and other topical issues, which is a long tradition of storytelling in Western culture. This along with politics and social mores being inspired by art.
Don't be so gloomy. After all, it's not that awful. Well, what the fellow said. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace, and what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. So long, Holly.
So was Larry Limes correct in that for Western civilization to create great art, it needed violence and spectacle? Our next podcast will look at politics and military power. In the meanwhile, consider this quiz question. Whether Matilda of Tuscany was A. a warlord who controlled northern Italy, B. a revered saint, C. the lover of Pope Gregory VII, or D. the wife of Gregory III, Duke of Lorraine. Now there is a pattern to these questions, so the answer should be becoming apparent. Try to work this one out without looking it up. If you like this channel, please subscribe and tick like. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I can be contacted at email russmills@iprimus.com.au. Thanks for listening.